The first thing that came to mind when people started calling Jon Jones the GOAT was, what kind of Dana White propaganda is this crap? I'm not saying the guy can't fight. I'm saying we need to be honest about what he's really accomplished and what he hasn't. Because there's a whole lot of smoke and mirrors in this legacy. I'm talking about questionable wins, drug suspensions like it's a hobby, and the long list of guys he beat that, well, didn't even belong in his weight class. And before the Jon Jones meat riders jump into the comments screaming,
"But he's undefeated!"
This isn't personal, bro. It's just a breakdown, but calling him the greatest of all time when he padded his record with middleweights, racked up failed drug tests, and fought a 42-year-old Stipe instead of Tom Aspinall? Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's start with the cleaned out the division claim. Yeah, he has fought a lot of tough guys, but let's really look at who he fought. A big chunk of Jones' resume is made up of fighters who either moved up from middleweight or were way past their prime when he faced them. Here's some names for you. Chael Sonnen.
I'm the man of the hour, Joe. Too sweet to be sour. What you see is what you get, and what you don't is better yet. I'm the women's pick. I'm the men's regret. And if you win against Chael Sonnen, you made a bad bet.
185 for his entire career until he got a title shot at 205. Off a loss, by the way. And let's not forget, that fight was on short notice. And Chael still managed to break Jones' toe before getting finished and still remained undefeated, undisputed, greatest of all time.
You don't think the belt would lie, do you? It says UFC middleweight champion on there.
You tapped. I saw you tap.
Well, it seems to be a misunderstanding and a misapplication of the rule process. I thought like if somebody had you in a tight hold, you could just like rub his leg a couple times and your tag team partner, would step in there and help out a little bit, and then they bring me to and they try to explain the rules, and there was like some kind of confusion, and he ended up getting his hand raised in an extremely tainted victory. But as I said, the real champion sits before you today, undefeated and undisputed.
We got Vitor Belfort. Came up from 185, nearly snapped Jones' arm with an armbar, and this wasn't even TRT Vitor. Let that sink in. Next, Lyoto Machida, another guy who fought at 185 early in his career, and he was already sliding down the rankings. Jones choked him unconscious and dropped him like a bag of laundry. Brutal? Yes. Impressive? Sure. But peak Machida? Not even close. Up next, Anthony Smith.
Who?
Former middleweight who was 4-4 at 185 before moving up. And despite being outclassed, Smith survived all 5 rounds because Jones could not finish him. He couldn't finish him. Anthony Smith sucks. Everyone finishes Anthony Smith. And Jones, the quote-unquote greatest of all time, could not? Bro. And lastly, Thiago Santos, another ex-middleweight, and he fought Jones on torn knees. Literally. Both MCL and ACL blown. And the fight still went to a split decision. One judge gave Santos the win. Let that sink in. Jones couldn't beat a guy with no legs. Let that sink in. Let's stop pretending like this was prime competition. Jones was fighting guys that were either undersized, past their best, or injured. It's not hate. It's just the truth. And don't even get me started on Dominic Reyes, alright? That wasn't just close. That was a daylight robbery, and you know it. Reyes outstruck him in the early rounds. He won the first 3 rounds, showed better cardio than expected, and had Jones looking confused. It was arguably the worst version of Jones we'd ever seen, and it might have been the most accurate one. So when people talk about Jon
Cleaning out the division,
just remember, the division wasn't that deep, and the fights a lot closer than people want to admit. Alright, it's about time we address the elephant in the room, the drug test. Jon Jones has failed more drug tests than any other UFC champion in history. And I'm not just talking about traces, I'm talking about real suspensions, pulled fights, and stripped titles. Let's walk through the timeline, shall we? 2015. Jones tests positive for benzoylecgonine, the main metabolite in cocaine, before UFC 182. Technically not banned out of competition by USADA, but still, cocaine is not a good look, especially not for a main event UFC champion. 2016. Days before UFC 200, Jones is pulled from the card after testing positive for clomiphene and letrozole. These aren't performance enhancers themselves, but they are used to cover up steroid use. That's why bodybuilders use them during post-psychotherapy. That's why USADA bans them. 2017, UFC 214, Jones returns, head kicks Daniel Cormier into oblivion, gets emotional in the post-fight speech, and then tests positive for Turinabol, a banned anabolic steroid. The fight result is overturned, the title is stripped again. 2018-2019, the pulsing picogram saga. USADA keeps finding trace amounts of Turinabol in Jones' system. The science is muddy, but what's clear is this. No other fighter got this kind of treatment. The UFC even moved an entire card from Las Vegas to California to keep Jones on it. Imagine if that was someone else. Say Aljamain Sterling. He'd be fighting in LFA right now. At a certain point, it stops being bad luck and it becomes a pattern. Jones didn't just fail one test, he failed multiple, got suspended, got stripped, and somehow the machine kept protecting him. The only reason people still accept it is because they want to believe he's the GOAT. But if any other fighter had this record of PD failures, or any other athlete, any other sport, they'd be erased from the conversation completely. Jon Jones, he gets a pass. Why? Because he's marketable? Because he's special? Please, it's because Dana's the biggest Jon Jones glazer, that's why. And we haven't even gotten to the legal issues yet. This man's out-of-cage record is straight up out of a video game. You think it was a GTA side quest at this point. 2012, DUI after crashing his Bentley into a pole. 2015, felony hit and run involving a pregnant woman. He fled the scene, came back to grab cash from his car, then ran again. That's not just irresponsible, it's reckless. 2019, battery allegation at a strip club. 2020, caught drunk behind the wheel with a firearm, fired a shot. This wasn't just a little bust. It was full DUI plus negligent use of a weapon. 2021, arrested for domestic violence just hours after being inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame.
God damn it! You can't make this shit up!
2024, most recently, allegedly assaulted a drug testing agent inside his gym. The guy who's already had multiple USADA violations is now assaulting a USADA officer. Come on. This is what we're calling the GOAT? The face of MMA? At some point, the character has to matter. Let's recap this career so we're all on the same page. Beat up ex-middleweights. Failed multiple drug tests. Got stripped of his title 3 times. More mugshots than knockouts. Arguably lost to Santos and Reyes. Did finally fight Stipe, but it was 42-year-old Stipe, out for years, nowhere near his prime. Ducked Tom Aspinall, the most dangerous active heavyweight today. Never had a real heavyweight title defense. And somehow, this is the GOAT? Look, I'll give him this. Jon Jones is a phenomenal fighter. One of the most creative to ever step into the cage. But let's stop pretending the resume is flawless. Let's stop acting like he did it all clean. Let's stop pretending like beating injured ex-middleweights and one aging legend means you're the greatest of all time. Because if we're being honest, Jon Jones isn't the GOAT. He's the most protected fighter in UFC history. Anyways, that's it from me. If you agree, drop a comment. If you don't, also drop a comment. I want to hear it. Just be real. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and if you want to support the channel, you can do that by buying me a coffee with the link in the description. Jon Jones Sims, don't take it personal, but go talk. Let's keep that crown for someone who earned it clean, like George St. Pierre.